Okay. Hey, guys. This is Sean DeGray. Nobody knows who that is, but it's me.
And you are listening to
The Gritty Bowmen.
It's all in perspective, right? If you could make $150,000 a year, but you had to work 80 hours a week and you were committed to a corporation that you hated what you did, is that more lucrative than making $70,000 a year doing what you love with a lot of free time? And who's richer?
One of the things I never want to say, and I even think this with life, is I never want to say, like, what if? Like, what? I hate that. I hate that feeling. What if I would have done this? Or what if I would have just tried this? Or what if? What if? And there's very few things that I say what if about. Very few things. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind. So that helps give me drive, because I don't want to ever say what if.
Randy always says this, you're going to run out of health before you run out of money.
What I love that Ryan Holiday started with is he says, who the heck am I to write this book?
Yeah.
Right, on ego. And who the heck are we to do this podcast on ego?
Completely.
I got about halfway through it, and I was thinking of all the people I know that are arrogant. I was going through going, that's his problem. Yep, that's why he does that. And then it dawned on me, this book isn't written for them. This book is written for you. There are people who try to be something. They try to be famous. They try to be wealthy. They try to be, they're playing to an audience. It's far more important to focus on doing something. Figure out what you want to do. Set goals. Reach those goals. Don't play for the audience.
Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know.
There's a lot more steak than sizzle in people who do things, and there's a lot more sizzle than steak in people who want to be things.
Yep. We have to.
I'm humble.
Deflate.
I'm humble.
Deflate. Guys, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are here for the special edition of the Gritty Bowmen Book Club with Brian Call, Corey Jacobsen, and Jordan Harbertson.
Who, Jordan, by the way, is the only one who can read, so Brian and I listen to the book.
No. You guys actually read the book. I listen to it.
I
love
had to read it because I listened the first time, and I thought, I'm never going to remember all this. My book is filled with highlights.
So that is the one thing that I think I'm going to have to do is get an actual physical copy so that because I've taken notes on my phone on the things that would pop out. I've been listening to the book to work and home, and then I listened to it when we went to ATA because I actually texted Brian. And I said, Brian, I need some books, right? This is the first of the year. I'm like, I'm done with extreme ownership. Well, I didn't know that I was going to get unloaded a freaking library of books. I still have all the texts. He just starts going, Jordan, read this one. Oh, this one's amazing too. Oh, and get this book. Oh, you got to love this one. I'm like, okay, but which one should I read? Well, this one's good too. I got a list of probably almost 25 books that he says I should read. And I'm like, let's start with Ego is the Enemy because we all talked about let's read this together. And but I'm excited because we have, what's the book that you and I were just talking about?
The Obstacle is the Way.
The Obstacle is the Way.
Ryan Holiday
I think that'll be our next book club read. But yeah, this book has been awesome. Awesome. Humbling. Learned a lot.
So we did our other podcast, the last time the three of us were together on our book club podcast was the Extreme Ownership podcast. And that was just a fun podcast to read a book like that and then to go over it together and kind of share our thoughts on it was good. And we got so many positive comments from people that followed the show that were heavily impacted from that. And I'm a huge reader. I've read a lot of books, and like when Jordan asked me what book, I'm like,
He's seriously like it's almost. Do you have those just in your phone on ready to just because you like one after another? Jordan, this one, this one, in bulk.
Like about a month after Audible.com launched. So I don't know what that was, like 2005?
That was 2005, 2006,
something like that.
Really? And I just found out about Audible like a month ago.
Where have you been?
Yeah,
so
where have I been?
He still doesn't know what an inbox is.
So what I did was I started the account, which gave me 2 credits, $20. It was like $15 at the time, something like that. And with 2 credits, I get 2 books a month. And it was just a recurring membership. So I got 2 books a month, plus you could get another book for like $10, $10 to $20. So I would get literally. I'm just I just like to read, and so I would download my 2 credits, and then I would buy an additional book, and sometimes 2. Not so much when I was in college because but when I graduated, I would most of my career in behind the desk, I would spend an hour driving to and from work. Not driving, I would take the bus. I would purposely take public transit, reduce my carbon footprint. And
Because you lived in
You
Oregon.
can tell he's a Colorado resident.
I'm
now.
from Portland,
From
Oregon.
Portland. Weird.
The other thing was I would before it was really about money. A big part of it was I was too cheap to pay for downtown parking, and I didn't want to pay for gas. So I rode my bike every day to work for almost 3 years. And literally, it was an hour on my bike there and an hour on my bike home. And so I would listen to books on those commutes, and same later on the train. And so Jordan, I think I have a couple hundred books
Yeah.
on my mobile device that I've read or listened to, and then others that I hardbound. So there's a lot of books I got turned on to over the years that I couldn't listen to. So I got the paperback, the hardcovers, and read those. I've talked to a lot of people who say they have a hard time listening to a book, and what I found is I actually read some studies on this. And they say it takes skill, it takes practice. So when you first listen to a book, like Anthony, who's notorious, he'd listen and he'd just zone out. And 5 minutes later, he'd be like, oh, crap, I got to rewind it because I wasn't listening to any of this stuff. And but as you get more and more honed or used to listening, I think that's one of the reasons why a podcast appealed to me, because I'd spent so many years listening to audiobooks.
Right.
That the audio medium just makes sense to me. So I'm so busy. I'm doing things. I'm riding a bike. Right. I don't have time. I can't pick up a book.
Yeah.
I can listen to music, but I want to learn things. And so music, I do listen to a lot of music, but it's for different.
It's for different reasons.
Yeah.
One thing that I was told recently after we did our podcast and we kind of talked about listening to the book or reading the book is a guy sent me a message and I wish I could find it. I was just trying to look and see and find it. So I'll kind of paraphrase it real quick.
Yeah.
But to your point, it was basically along lines of like, how many hours of the year do we spend listening to music in our car or listening to music all the time? Music is great. Music invites emotion, memories, all these good things that you remember that song. But they said that if you would spend the amount of time that you've been listening to music, listening to audiobooks or podcasts and learning and just changed, and you would receive a college education essentially within a year's time because of the amount of time you'd be spending in your. So when I listen to these books, for me it's to work and it's back home because my commute's about an hour. And so then I've been listening to them because we've been traveling a lot this month for shows. And so on the plane, instead of what I typically do is play games and stuff, I've been listening to these books. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, and we're landing. I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, it's funny because I'm happy to land because I say a prayer every time I get in a plane.
Yeah.
But when we're landing, I'm looking at going, dang it, I got to a good point and I have to pause this and go to a show and I'm not going to be able to listen to this for a while.
Yeah.
So you have to put on pause.
The beauty I found is you can listen to it at a higher rate of speed than just 1x. So I'm listening. I've tested how fast I can actually listen and still consume it and understand it.
Yep.
And so you can get through. I listened to Ego is the Enemy in about a 4-hour drive. And,
Yep.
I've done that too.
One plane ride. That was my plane ride. I finished
great.
that book in one plane ride.
You can listen, and then to go back and read it, I got way more out of it listening to it and then going and reading it because a lot of the things that stood out were reiterated in my memory, and I was able to highlight them and write them down. And so now, I think it sticks.
Jordan will tease me about using big words sometimes, and
These $5 words.
and it's seriously a 10, 12 years of listening to books every week. And there was a time where I was getting into like just adventure novels like Vince Flynn or Lord of the Rings or something like that, right?
Good book.
So I'd be like, I'd do 2 or 3 in a row and 3 months have gone by and all I listen to is like what I would consider entertainment but not education. And I was listening to Dave Ramsey and he's like, look, put a rule in place. For every nonfiction book you read or fiction book you read, you need to read a nonfiction book. So I just put that rule in there for me. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to read a book, another nonfiction book if I've just finished one. I'm going to read a fiction book. I switch them up. And I know a lot of people who only read nonfiction or only read fiction, and I think they're both awesome. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I think, where I'm at today, a lot of that is because of all the books I've read. There's just so much out there that people have to share that's awesome. So now today we're going to cover the book Ego is the Enemy,
which is this guy right here.
And
Corey has gone to town on with a highlighter.
I wore out a yellow highlighter.
Yeah, I guarantee you had to buy another one at Staples.
So I've read that book. I've listened to that book 3 times.
I'm 2.5. I'm almost up to your speed.
So let me ask you, Corey. You read the book, and when we talked about ego, we call it pride. We could call it ego, but basically, in this book, well, how about we'll have Corey summarize it. What's the premise of the book?
I think even backing up a little bit, when we talked about extreme ownership, it tied in really well for us to talk about business and how, we got into business and it applies to life and hunting and everything. This one, I didn't get as much business out. I mean, it absolutely applies and we can tie it in there, but it was a more personal look me of, how am I doing? And it was a good time to just reevaluate and say, okay, I guess if you think that you don't have ego, you need to read this book twice. If you think you have ego, you need to read it twice. It's there were things, that came out of it that made me think, okay, that is ego. I struggle with that, and I try really hard not to. In fact, one of my greatest qualities is my humility.
I mean, I didn't want to say it, but I'm a really humble guy.
Yeah.
And so with that,
But yeah, so I mean, it for me, it was great because once you address that, and, one of the things he said was, you sweep the floor every day. And ego's the same way. You've got to sweep that floor every day and then sweep it again because it comes back.
It's I like what he said, too. He called it every day there's a daily roll call.
Yep. Every day there's a daily roll call.
And that roll call is, today are you going to be humble or do you have ego?
To be or to do.
Yeah.
And that's the roll call.
And one thing for everyone who's listening, as we dive into this, what I love that Ryan Holiday started with is he says, who the heck am I to write this book?
Yeah.
Right, on ego. And who the heck are we to do this podcast on ego?
Completely.
Right? But the thing that you're both of you are right on as we dive into it is a roll call that each one of us, every single person listening to this podcast, the 3 of us ourselves, have to take a checklist every day and make sure that we keep that ego at bay as much as possible because it can come out, it can be ugly, it can, as we dive in, we'll get more of it, but it's tough.
Corey, and it's in every aspect of our life. I mean, sometimes there are things that as I was reading this, I thought, well, that's not ego. That's part of who I am. And then I got thinking, no, that's ego. And, there's a lot of quotes out there. David Bednar said, we can't be offended. We choose to take offense to something.
Right.
And that's ego. That's pride, all of those things.
When earlier you said the roll call is to be or to do. What does that mean?
That was probably my favorite part, and there's a ton of quotes that go along with it, but basically there are a lot of people in life, and we can use the hunting industry or any industry or neighbors, however we want to look at it, there are people who try to be something. They try to be famous. They try to be wealthy. They try to be... They're playing to an audience.
Yes.
And they want to be recognized. And, Ryan Holiday in the book just said, it's far more important to focus on doing something. Figure out what you want to do. Set goals. Reach those goals. Don't play for the audience. Play for you for those goals. And, one of the comments was, there's a lot more steak than sizzle in people who do things, and there's a lot more sizzle than steak in people who want to be things.
Yep.
And people want the steak, not the sizzle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, be something. You might have, you might be in the limelight or the spotlight for a while, but you're going to fade. Do something, and you will become something naturally rather than forcing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I read this book, and I read another book that I've read, Mere Christianity, probably 40 times by C.S. Lewis. And there's a chapter in there, I think it's chapter 10, where he talks about pride and ego. And I read that maybe 10 years ago. And I remember thinking, I don't have pride. Like, I'm a pretty humble dude. you know? And then, I mean, a little bit, like most people, but for the most part. And that I read that, and I realized how wrong I was, right? And and a lot of people are listening to this, and they're going, oh, "Who cares?" Right? Yeah. Pride doesn't matter. Pride is like, or ego is not a big deal. Like, there's a lot of successful people with ego. Yeah. It's okay to be arrogant. Like, there's a lot of people who pull it off. So I think though, pride is one of those. Ego is one of those things that he says in the book, and I think it's so true. Anybody who's out there trying to be successful in life, as a human being, as a person, in business, you will never be where you could be in life if you can't get past your ego. Yep. If you can't get through pride. And he tells that one quote that smacked me in the face was, "Ego, everywhere you go, ego is there too." Yep. And two, the worst, the enemy of everything you want, like the worst thing already resides inside you. It's yourself. Your biggest limiting factor is you.
Ego is the enemy of everything you want and everything you have.
Yep. That was the one I was getting at.
That hit me.
That was like, okay, ego is the enemy of everything I have and everything I want. Yep. That's powerful. So with that, I'm going to read to you guys. I wrote this note down, and after I read the book, I felt so strongly about what I had read and stuff. I was like, man, I really need to share this. But who else is going to geek out on this with me, right?
Right.
And then come along, you two nerds.
And then we've got this really cool Gritty Book Club.
Yeah, totally. But before that, I did that, and I wrote these notes down, and I was simply gonna turn the camera on, and for 5 minutes, I was just gonna say, here's podcast number whatever on Ego is the Enemy. You should go read this book, and here's my thoughts on it. But now we're doing this one together, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm going to read to you guys what I was going to say. And these are just quotes and notes I took from the book. I just said, friends, thanks for making Gritty Bowmen possible. If you had told me 2 years ago that I would be making a living creating films and sharing ideas, I would not have believed you. In fact, some friends did tell me exactly that, and I dismissed their confident statements as delusions of grandeur. I had friends go, you're gonna be awesome when you do this. My sister, you're gonna make great podcasts. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But here I am doing exactly that. Success can be a blessing, and it can also be a curse. We've all seen how success can take a basically good person and turn them into a twisted version of their former self. In an effort to continually improve myself and the world around me, I've read many life-changing books. In my search, I thought I would find a long list of pitfalls and negative people that I would need to learn to recognize and avoid in order to navigate the paths of success. Instead of a long list of hazards and perilous pitfalls, I came to the realization that ego and pride are my biggest enemy. What do I mean by that? What am I saying? I recently read the book Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, published by Tim Ferriss. He explains it like this. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, your worst enemy already lives inside you, your ego. Now more than ever, our culture fans the flames of ego. It's never been easier to talk, to puff ourselves up. We can brag about our goals to millions of our fans and followers, things only rock stars and cult leaders used to have. We can follow and interact with our idols on Twitter. We can read books and sites and watch TED Talks, drink from a fire hose of inspiration and validation like never before. We can name ourselves CEO of our exists-only-on-paper company. We can announce big news on social media about ourselves and outlets that used to be sources of objective journalism. Some of us do this more than others, but it's only a matter of degree. What is ego? An unhealthy belief in our own importance. Arrogance, self-centered ambition, that petulant child inside every person, the one that chooses getting his or her way over anything or anyone else. The need to be better than, more than, recognized for, far past any reasonable utility. That's ego. It's the sense of superiority and certainty that exceeds the bounds of confidence and talent. It's when the notion of ourselves and the world grows so inflated that it begins to distort the reality that surrounds us.
Just so you know, Brian, that was my quote number one that I was going to use to lead in. So
you literally took it right from his notes.
It's powerful stuff, isn't it?
It is, and it's just, the thing that stuck out to me the first time I listened to it, I got about halfway through it, and I was thinking of all the people I know that are arrogant. I was going through going, that's his problem. Yep, that's why he does that. Well, look at that guy on social media. It's all arrogance. He's trying to be recognized for something he hasn't earned it. And then it dawned on me, this book isn't written for them. This book is written for you. What are you getting out of
Jacobsen
it? And
Jordan Harbertson.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to use this to point why other people struggle. And I think the value of it comes when we're able to objectively look at it and say,
it's easy.
This is me.
Yeah, it's easy to deflect.
Yeah.
Easy to deflect. And it goes back to our first discussion, which is taking extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Right? And for situation or taking extreme ownership for your own ego.
Right.
And recognizing, like you did and I did, and I'm sure Brian did, that as ego is the enemy, that part that you just read is in the first part of the book in one of my favorite sections.
Yeah.
And it literally struck home for me, even as, us in Mountain Ops, and you talk about how the gratitude you have for where you've come in such a short time. We started around the same time, as you remember.
Yeah.
And Corey's been successful in his ventures. And that, for me, is where I started to have to take some real roll call and really look at it as I read this book and say, Jordan, Mountain Ops, we've been so we have been so blessed as a company to see the success, to look where we are now, the booth that we're in, and the associations we have, and the people that have helped us to get there. And Casey and I just recently sat down 3 days ago, and had this talk about ego, and about because they're wanting to read it as well, and we all came to the conclusion, we're like, we are going to, as Mountain Ops grows, we are going to keep fighting this battle with ego, and we have to make sure that we keep ourselves in check, and we never forget, like you were saying, never forget where we came from, who we are, and why we do what we do. Not what we're trying to be as a company, but what we're doing as a company, and staying true to our roots and our core values and belief to help us to maintain as we continue to grow, that we don't grow outside of ourselves, that we lose touch with the reality.
That's one of the quotes where he talks about if ego is that thing that keeps us from being in touch with our world, right? Like it gives us this grand idea of ourselves and our place in life. If ego is that thing, then it's that thing that blocks us from having a real connection to the world around us.
Yep.
And I see that sometimes where somebody will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I need to launch my brand. And I love to come on Gritty Bowmen. I'd like to be, I'd like you to, tell everybody my story, but they don't have a story.
It's not a story.
They
it's
have
a
some
made-up
hats
story.
and some T-shirts,
Yeah.
but they haven't done anything.
They haven't done anything
And,
yet, like you were talking about, Corey.
And everyone's done something like with their life,
respectfully.
But when it comes down to like, what are you trying to give people when you come on? What is it you want to make a difference doing? Yeah. And the focus isn't really to make a difference doing anything. It's to be recognized, and it's more about to be famous than to do.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I want to be recognized as an authority on this, or as the greatest of this, and it's being something. And when you try to be something, you lose. It's just not a platform that's sustainable.
I hear Jordan and Casey all the time. We'll be in a hotel room, they'll be in a call, there'll be an email or something, and they're dealing with someone who's come to them to talk to them. And Casey especially is extremely blunt with people in a kind way, but he's like, look, you're asking to be supported, to work with us as a partner with Mountain Ops. Respectfully, this is what you're worth dollar-wise, because this is what we think your revenue you could generate working with us, and this is how we could help you. At the end of the day, though, it shocks me how many people feel like they're worth a lot of money.
A lot more.
A lot of money. But yet, I mean, from my eyes, not that I'm worth a lot of money either, but there's a reality, and then there's what you're worth, and then what people will imagine in their mind.
Yeah, people will create their own value, right? Sometimes in their minds to say, well, look at all that I've done. Look at all these things. This is this is my value. And it's
look
like
how many social media posts I've made.
Look at all these posts, or look at these my number of fans and all these things. And while you have to, again, take a roll call for a second and take a step back and say, while that is true, if we really dive into it, now we can really get into the value proposition that you're bringing to us and if it makes sense. I mean, I think when you talk about Casey, and you've known Casey and I for very long, I love my brother so much, and we're good cop, bad cop in a lot of ways because Jordan's over here, Mr. Bipartisan, trying to figure out how to make this work. I don't want to, and Casey's over here like, cut him off or get done with this, or he's blunt. And it's a good combination because it helps us to stay balanced and to keep us, at bay with situations like this where we have lots of people with the fortunate and blessed success that we've had at Mountain Ops. We've had many people want to be a part of it. Because why wouldn't you look at it? Take a second and just look out, and I get chills because I see all of these great companies that we've now got that are associated with Mountain Ops, that we've got this culture and this community that is literally nothing but positive people trying to help each other out. None of us here are trying to gain more than the other. It's what can we do together, that harbor that has the ships that tide raises, and it raises us all.
Well, and as I look around here, okay, some of my favorite people in the world
are right in this space.
Well, and they're the humble people. like honestly, humility is such a rare trait in the world today, especially with what's out there, and it's hard to cultivate or to grow or to keep, right? And I think it's neat because of, like what you're saying, Jordan, in this space here, there's nobody really in this group that's not humble. That's not that doesn't strive for humility.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's also important to recognize there's not anybody in that group that doesn't have to fight every day to keep it at bay.
That's why, yes,
all of us have to fight that and strive for it every day. And we take a second and we look at, and I'm just going to talk to you two, okay? So here goes me just looking at you guys through the magnifying glass.
Great. My hunting partners did this on the way down here today.
But if you think about it, if you really think about it, so you look at, Brian, you look at where, this goes back to your comment in the book where we talk about to be or to do. Okay, so Brian, your aspirations in which you had, you aspired to say, I would love someday to do films and videos, and all of a sudden this podcast thing happened. You're like, this is cool. Like, if I could do this all the time, you had aspirations, right? So first you were like, I'm aspiring to do something. I'd love to be.
I always for nearly, I always am asking myself, what are my motives? Why? Every day and every action almost, I'm like, am I doing this because I want to make a difference in people's lives, or am I doing this because I want to be liked?
If I want to be something, right? And so if you look at your situation, where you started and where you've come, your aspirations, I would say, were rooted in what we've discussed a lot, which is your love for people. You love people, just like me and you. We love people. I love this show because I get to meet so many people. But before you made the transition from full-time job at your real life job, to what people would think is a fantasy with Gritty Bowmen, but it's a real life job now.
Right.
Your aspirations and the success you've seen came because of what you aspired to do to help other people. And that's where you were still just a hunting and doing your thing, and a family man. You're a father. You've got a wonderful wife and family, and you were just doing what it was to make ends meet and to get by and to make it happen. And then this transition and this opportunity came, and you grabbed it, and you haven't squandered it yet. Yeah. Failure still follows, right? In this book, guys, it talks about aspirations, success, and failure, and the cycle that brings us. Corey, when I look at you and where we have become friends, and where you came from humble beginnings as well. You came from a guy that just loved to hunt elk and pursue it before you ever got in front of many people and became the 10-time world elk calling champion.
Yeah, something like that.
Am I off by numbers? Are we 10?
Yeah, you're off. But that's okay. Nobody's counting.
Yeah. But you were just focusing on being a good hunter, a good father. You were doing construction, building houses, and then all of a sudden, here comes Elk Extreme Elk Magazine, and here comes Elk 101, and here comes your dad's business with elk calls, and you guys just wanted to do something, which is let's build great products and let's deliver something for these elk hunters. And then what's come from that is a format in which you've been able to bring information to elk hunters all over the world, to help them to receive some of the success, or maybe help them to have success the way that you've seen it from what you've done.
Sure. Well, and it's just the whole, he talks about in the book that you have to step back, and I forget the chapter, but it's, basically look at the universe. You are so tiny in the overall scheme of the universe. yes, you play a certain very specific and authentic role in that, but once you start thinking you're bigger than the universe around you, and the universe starts spinning around you, and you're the center of it, that's ego.
That's ego. That's the distorted reality that you're talking about, Brian.
I was back to the popular thing. When I was on the drive down here, I was talking to Dwayne about this. Snyder and I, some people will come up to us. We were at the Northwest Sportsman Show last week. It's great to see my family and my friends and reconnect with old friends. But there were a lot of people who came up to me and wanted a photo, wanted to talk, wanted to shake my hand and meet me. Right? It's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling to be on that side, to have so many people know me and then want to meet me. And get a photograph with me and stuff. I feel like I'm a pretty regular dude. I put my pants on like everybody else, right? So
one leg at a time.
And then I have friends that are like, man, you're so popular now. And there's that you went to that party over here, and when I saw you in the picture with that guy, and you were in this party over here. And I was telling Dwayne, I'm like, popularity, fame, recognition, those for me truly are just a byproduct of producing what I want to make, of doing the things I want to do. That's a byproduct. It's like, it's not the goal at all. It's just something that comes. It's an
appendage to everything that you're building here, because it innately, naturally happens because of the growth and the expansion of not only your podcast, you as a person, you and Aaron.
And I think you can look at it in different ways. For me, I look at it and I could look at that and go, wow, I'm so awesome. I'm a pretty awesome dude, right? Or and I firmly believe this, that when I'm nervous around someone that I've met for the first time, but I feel like I've known for a long time, that I respect, I'm genuinely the reason I feel that way is because I feel gratitude toward that person. Because for whatever they did, they made me laugh, or I admire them in some way because they taught me things that I didn't know before. And so I get around those people, and it's funny who I might be nervous around, because nobody knows who they are in my family or my circles or my friends. But I know because maybe I read their book, all 3 of their books, right? And those books were pivotal for me in my life. So I feel like if somebody likes what I'm doing,
that'll keep you humble.
Yeah. If somebody likes what I'm doing, or somebody likes me, it's because they like what I've accomplished, or how I've influenced their life. And that again is there's just gratitude there. But Aaron and I will Snyder, dude, pull those pants down, you dork. So who does that, dude? So he has a back with a crack, doesn't he? I tell
time and time again.
I tell Aaron often. We take inventory on our friends and acquaintances and relationships all the time. I talk to Aaron about it a lot, and I go back to that quote. You're like, you become like the 5 people or 10 people you spend the most time with.
You're the average of them.
Yeah,
You're
crabs.
The average.
The crabs are spending time within the bucket.
Well, and he mentions in the book, Frank Shamrock, the great UFC fighter, when he has a training business, and he talks about the plus minus equal. And you always find somebody that's better than you to aspire to be like.
Yep.
You find somebody who's lesser than you to help them and to mentor them and to foster them into becoming better. And then you find somebody that's equal to test yourself continually against.
Yeah.
And it's same with friends. You're the average. And if you're hanging out with 5 people who are dragging you down, you're going down.
Yeah, Aaron and I have had that conversation a lot, and we've talked about each other's acquaintances and friends and family and so forth. And there is it's important to me. I've spent the latter half of my life making sure that I am surrounded by the right kind of people that are that have that humility, that want to see me succeed.
Yeah.
Because I want to see them succeed, and we build each other up rather than in a toxic relationship where one is always dragging someone down. As soon as they get a little success, it's like they're there to knock them down a little bit. And
it's almost like, it turns into a competition that we see somebody be successful. That doesn't take away from our ability to be successful.
Yeah.
And so often you see that people just instantly get jealous of success, even though it has nothing to do with their success, not even in the same realm, But they just see somebody successful.
And that's something to bring up. When I read the books, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and he talked about pride, one of the things that he said was, how do you know if you have pride, right? Like, I mean, do you have it? Do you not have it? Do you have an ego? Do you not have an ego? And one of the things that he mentioned was when you walk into a room, and you're in a room full of people, and there is a person that is just an egomaniac, does that person annoy the crap out of you? Or are you like, yeah, he's an egomaniac, but it's cool. It's just, which guy are you?
Yeah.
Because the one way to find out if you have pride is to put you in a room with someone else who has pride.
And it goes
Two
back
egos together.
Two egos together.
And if you're the guy that's like, dude, I hate that guy. He's such a freaking egomaniac. Then it was a reality check for me because I'm like, you know what? I do respond like that when I'm in a room with this guy.
Yep.
And I started to realize that him aside, I have my own huge ego problem. And I can say now, in general, 9 out of 10 times when I'm in those rooms and somebody is an egomaniac and they're the big noise at the party and the popular guy and they're going on and on and on, I don't feel any animosity toward that person at all.
Yeah.
And
they don't affect your success.
And if I feel anything, and it's not out of arrogance, it's just I feel bad because I really want that person. I wish that person, because I know it's the enemy of everything they want and everything that they have.
And you and I talked about this on a recent occurrence where an individual kind of went off and did what they did, and we sat there, and as we were texting and talking about the situation, we kind of both came to the conclusion where it's like, because my Jordan's immature, egotistical self and the situation was like, I'm gonna. This person's attacking me, my company. I'm going to attack back. Don't you challenge me.
How dare you?
How dare you? Do you know who I know? Like, I will take you down.
Do you know who I am?
Do you realize who you're dealing with? And so it's like, I had to take a roll call right then and realize, Jordan, that's old, immature Jordan.
Ego Jordan.
That really would have probably, honestly, and this is ego to say, I probably could have done a lot of damage to that person to attack not only their integrity, but what they are trying to be.
Yeah.
And instead, as you and I were talking about it, you're like, Jordan, think about it. So as we talked about it, we came to the conclusion together. We were like, you know what? I'm not angry at this person. I literally just feel sad for the way that they're going about this because it's not hurting me. It's hurting them.
Well, and they're their own worst enemy. I mean, they're inflicting personal damage.
The pains and they're inflicting the wounds themselves, not me, because the situation that unfolded was a situation that I challenged the individual because they had done something they weren't supposed to, and instead of accepting and taking extreme ownership and accepting it,
we talked about that.
That individual resented to find
someone
every
else's
means,
fault, anything else's fault.
They deflected to everyone else, and it could have been very easy, Brian. It could have been very easy for me to fall victim and fall into the trap.
And that's the thing I think is really important to the roll call, right? Whenever I'm in a situation and I'm upset, Corey, like I'll go off or I'll feel like enraged or indignant over something.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately I know that it's really not, it's pride. It's my own pride, my own ego creeping in. And that's where that roll call takes place. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. Am I upset because this is just wrong, or because this isn't how it should be, or am I upset because I'm jealous, because I'm envious,
because
I'm I've got ego, you know, and I can stop myself all the time and do that self-assessment. And it's been a life changer for me to be able to stop myself when I feel pride sneaking in. And a lot of times we feel like it's justified. And in many ways.
And it might be.
You can be wronged by someone that was a dear friend and you're surprised by it. But I think that self-assessment all the time, all you got to do is check yourself. Like, how do I react when I'm around an egomaniac?
I heard this in Harlem when I lived in Harlem for a while. They always would say, check yourself, before you wreck yourself. They'd actually made hats that say on it. At first I was like, what are you talking about? Check yourself. It's a catchy phrase, but yeah, I mean, if you don't keep yourself in check, you're going to wreck. You're going to do something that's going to not only inflict wounds on yourself, it's going to affect others, it's going to harm you. You look like...
Yeah, Corey.
Oh, there's so many notes
I know
in there.
this is so great. We're having this awesome discussion, and Corey's just sitting there. Oh, okay.
7
next
pages
page.
of notes.
Tell
here.
me, Corey.
What I want to know is this your book? Look at this thing.
This is. I've
That's
organized
great.
it.
That's how you know you internalized it.
Yeah.
Took it seriously.
Yeah. And going back to that, checking yourself, and how do we do that? It's really easy to tell our own story and to start believing our own story. With social media, we can be anybody we want to be. Yeah. And we can make everybody believe it, including ourselves.
That's one thing I like. Sorry to interrupt you again, but I was like, when I was in Alberta, and Aaron and I were going after these mule deer, Aaron could easily tell everyone over and over again that he did it all on his own, right? That he shot this mule deer with his stick bow, and boom, he was, he's just a really good hunter, right? But Aaron has gone out of his way repeatedly to say, I couldn't have done it without Brian. Brian flagged me in. Brian spotted that deer. I was the one that did the stalk. It's very easy when he says it's easy to tell your own story and then believe it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very easy a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now to forget Brian was there at all.
Yep.
And it's just Aaron, and he's just an amazing ninja stick bow shooting master.
You guys have heard of the company called Facebook? You heard that story? Real quick. Mark Zuckerberg, great guy. Thank you for Facebook. It's what's helped all of our businesses and has changed our society. But in the Social Network movie and in the book that I've read, it talks about this very thing where Mark Zuckerberg, because, he was brilliant. He created this social media platform to connect people on a level that this world has never seen before.
Yep.
And there were individuals who were very key in helping that both get funded, started, and be a part of it to get it off the ground. And what unfolded is Zuckerberg eventually started to hang around the wrong people and associate, because those people were the guy who started Napster and big deal, and the people that had helped him get to where he was became not a part of the business anymore.
Yeah, basically he like you said, Corey, he came to believe his own story.
Totally.
Zuckerberg believed in his mind, and he's even come out publicly and when everything unfolded and this movie came out, he didn't obviously like how he was portrayed, but he did come out and say, yes, it was a time in my life that I wasn't happy or I kind of have regrets about, because the people and the gentlemen that were involved in it that helped him get to where he was, he was the brains. Did he create the algorithms? Did he create the code? Did he build
he's talented for sure.
But he was a terrible salesman. He could never have sold that platform to the colleges and got it to where it was without the gentleman who went and got it, the venture capitals that come in. But
that's how pride works. It slowly takes over, and pretty soon you are believing this alternate story, and you truly...
This alternate universe or reality.
You truly and wholly believe that story over time. That's how ego works.
Yep.
It's crazy. But pretty soon you are now this other person. And tell me what you were going to say about that.
There's so much there. It would take us days to go through everything and express it, I think. But you were talking about we need to do a self-check. We need to continually be, when we walk in a room, do we get annoyed by somebody who's over there talk, and not ever doing anything? They're being somebody, but they aren't doing anything.
You're getting to my favorite part of the book.
For me, reading this book was great because, like I said, I'm going through it, and I'm 2 hours into it, and I am going through in my mind a roll call of everyone I know who has this issue.
Right.
And that, for me, was the reality check. That was my roll call that, I'm focusing on them. I'm focusing on their weaknesses. I'm focusing on that. And it's really a mask for my own insecurity. And that was eye-opening for me. Why am I doing this? So I was able to break it down and start, looking inward and say, what's my issue here? Why am I thinking about that person? Why do I recognize what annoys me about them? Well, it's because I've got the same tendency there, and I'm not in complete control of it yet.
One of my favorite quotes that I've been thinking about lately is it goes like this. It says, there's nothing more beautiful than someone who goes out of their way to make life beautiful for others.
Yep.
And you can't do that when you're wrapped up in yourself.
No.
And one of the things that I see often, especially in the hunting world, is ego. And one of the things that you see is arrogance, just meanness.
Yeah.
And belittling, condescending.
Which really, to me, again, goes back to ego. You can't go out of your life to make life go. You can't make life beautiful for someone else if you're absorbed in yourself. And to me, I think that's a wonderful quote. I'll say it again. There's nothing more beautiful than someone who goes out of their way to make life beautiful for someone else. And
that's doing something. They aren't worried about being something. They're doing something for someone else. And in that becomes their identity. And that quote, I know I'm not going to be able to find it because it's buried in 7 pages of just notes here. But the ego is a type of storytelling in which eventually your talent becomes your identity and your accomplishments become your worth. It's you. And when you look at purpose, if you have purpose in what you do, that takes the I out of it. It's not about recognition for you. It's about what is your purpose, what is your drive, what's your motivation. And, you all of a sudden can face a situation with poise instead of pose, which is one of the things he talks about. There's so many people that pose to be something. But those who have poise, they're able to do that because they have a goal they're working toward. They're doing something.
What did you think about the part in the book where he's talking about people who talk about all the things they're going to do,
ready?
but don't actually do anything?
Yeah,
Yes.
Jordan can handle that one because he loves the chapter.
I knew we were getting. This is one of my favorite chapters for many reasons. And the very first quote that comes right out of this chapter, it's called Talk, Talk, Talk. Mm-hmm. First quote says, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." And he goes in and he starts talking about in this chapter, and I love it because honestly, Casey and I, from a marketing standpoint, preach this all the time, which is it's no longer, business has changed in this world, in every industry. It is no longer the big versus the small. It is the fast versus the slow. The fastest road to success, both for business, for personal growth, is to do and to execute. Because we can spend a lot of time, like we're doing on this podcast, talking, and we can talk, but it's work, and what you do. Because the reality is that people will end up spending all day talking about all these cool ideas or what they're going to do and what they're going to accomplish, and they'll keep talking, and after they're done talking, they actually feel a sense of accomplishment. They have spent literally all this time talking about what they're going to do, that they've spent time saying, "Oh, well, I've spent time on this, so I'm moving forward."
That's the part of the book, I figured this out a couple years ago before I read this book, that when I was working on a film and I told people, I've got this film and I'm working on it and it's this and it's going to be that and it's got this and it's got this, that I was actually demotivated to finish the film.
Yep.
And I didn't get things done. But when I didn't talk about it, I was cruising. I would get things done. So I found myself talking less about making an effort to talk less about what I'm going to do and then just do it.
Yep.
This comes from this section of the book, which a lot of you can probably relate to, just like I do. In this section here, he's talking about the writer and former Gawker blogger Emily Gold, a real life Hannah Horvath, if there ever was one, realized this during her 2-year struggle to get a novel published. You're talking about getting your movie published, but she was getting a novel published. Though she had a 6-figure book deal, so that she had signed it, dotted line, like they're good. Book hasn't been written, really, Yeah. She was stuck. Why? She was too busy spending a lot of time on the internet. That's why. In fact, I can't really remember anything else I did in 2010. I tumbled, I tweeted, and I scrolled. This didn't earn me any money, but I felt like it was work. I justified my habits to myself in various ways. I was building my brand. Blogging was a creative act. Even curating by reblogging someone else's post was a creative act. If you squinted, it was also the only creative thing I was doing. So how often in life, and especially today, more than ever, this is just one small part of this chapter that I love, but talks about basically, okay, so we sat, and I find myself getting into what I call this social vortex. I go into the black hole.
Yeah.
You pull your phone up, and you're locked into this thing, and you sit there and you start scrolling. You double tap and you make some comments, and you do all these things, and you feel like, oh look, I did some good work today. You know?
Right.
Respectfully, guys, you did. You maybe made somebody's day brighter by commenting, liking. Yeah. People love to feel loved or appreciated. But did you do your job in which you were supposed to do that day? Did you make your film? Did you upload the blog and get the email stuff out? Did you get
were you productive?
Product? Yeah, were you
busy?
productive or were you busy? And that's the thing, is that not only do we talk, but we can find ourselves doing things that we feel are productive.
Yeah.
But it's literally, did you earn literally any money by doing that?
Yeah.
Did you actually grow your brand? Did you actually grow as a person from those experiences? And it's arguable to say that you might have, but not as much as you could have, as you actually were doing the things that would make you a better person or make your brand grow.
That story about the writer, the author, they're trying to, because I think we all get in
we're especially in the
writer blocks.
We produce content. Corey and I a lot.
I'm on the social media. I have to produce all the content, me and Casey, to market and keep people digesting our content at Mountain Ops.
It's very easy to
stall.
Yeah.
To stall out. And there's a quote he has talking about passion versus purpose. Passion is kind of that person that's just running around screaming, staying busy, but not accomplishing anything. And purpose, when we have purpose, we can dig down. In fact, there's another book, Cal Newport, Deep Work. That's been a great one, just talking about so often we get distracted by Facebook, by Instagram, by text messages, by emails. We never really just buckle down and get some work done, some real work. But a quote from Ryan Holiday, passion versus purpose. Passion is seen in those who can tell you in great detail who they intend to become and what their success will be like. They can tell you all the things they're going to do or have even begun, but they cannot show you the progress because there rarely is any.
Yeah.
So it's, that's that talk.
I like that one, that section either on passion versus purpose. I think we've talked about this on an earlier podcast.
We talked, well, you and I talked about how passion can actually be damaging to us because when we're too passionate, we're overly passionate, we can harm not only ourselves or maybe what we're passionate about, but purpose is passion with boundaries, as it talks about in the book, right? Because as we have purpose, because we're passionate about something, that purpose drives us through that passion, but we stay within boundaries to
What I like about it is often passion, purpose is external, and passion is ourselves. I feel like if you focus on purpose, then it's really hard to get derailed.
Yeah. Because you know what you're doing.
And I'm passionate about teaching other people how to elk hunt. I love to see people be successful. That's my passion. That alone doesn't accomplish anything. I've got to have a purpose, or what's the purpose? Yeah. And once you put that passion with the purpose,
you bridle that to the point where you're like,
it's putting the sizzle with the steak.
Yeah.
You've got the substance there. Yeah, it's okay to be passionate about it, but if you just have passion, ambition, endless ambition is easy. Anybody can put their foot down on the gas pedal and push it as hard as they can and go flying off the cliff. And Ryan Holiday talks about that. Anybody can take their foot off the pedal and slow down to nothing. It's applying the right amount of pressure at the right time in the right place, going the right direction, and all of that. And when you couple the two together, the purpose and the passion, you can accomplish a lot.
Yeah. So, you're driving up here from Idaho, and you've got Donnie and Dirk in the vehicle with you.
Yep.
And humbling you along the way.
And this comes up. What are some of the things you guys discussed?
Oh, man. So we know we're doing a podcast, and they have been prepped for it. In fact, Dirk unloaded for about an hour on me. Seriously, things that he's built up, these frustrations about me that I do that he's going to share on the podcast, in fun and everything.
Yeah. But
after reading this book and hearing Dirk say it, I sat there quietly like for an hour on the drive thinking, I've got a lot of work to do. It's as a hunting partner, as a friend, as a father, as a husband, all of this, ego is real. And I try really hard to be humble continually on a daily basis. But to hear them say some of these things, it was painful. You know, and he wasn't doing it in a painful way. It was just, you know, this is what I'm going to talk about on the podcast. And so, you know, that's a precursor for the podcast to come. It's going to be really good. And there's going to be a truck that runs over me and backs up a couple times. But one of the things, you know, that was brought up, and I was expressing to them some of my frustrations with myself, some of the things that I struggle with. And it was a deep conversation. And I said, I'm open to suggestions. I probably won't take any of them because I'm too prideful, but I'm open to hear them at least. And one of the things, the elk calling contest. You know, Jordan mentioned 9-time world champion elk caller.
Oh, I gave you a +1?
It sounds great. It really does. And I mean, it strokes my ego. Yeah. And I have to be careful. And my wife continually says, when's enough enough? You know, step aside. It's time to step aside. And in my mind, it's like, no, I want to run this thing for another 30 years and make sure that my legacy is established. And that's being something. That's not doing anything. When I started the elk calling contest, that was my platform to say I have credibility.
Yeah.
I have credibility to be able to launch a business, and this is my purpose. And I'm utilizing that. And I have to be really careful not to just say I'm so tangled up in being and becoming something. And so Dirk and I talked about that, and he said, what is it that drives you? I said, I'm so competitive, I can't stand to think of somebody else winning. And Dirk and I, we've got an agreement. We won't call against each other. And part of it is because that competition so often turns negative into jealousy, into, you know, we're too immature to handle that kind of competition.
So as you're on this car ride down here and you're having this discussion, Brian, I mean, the book talks so deeply about this. Another one of my favorite sections is that because ego begins to consume us to the point where we think we know everything, or we're the best at what we do. You're the best caller in the industry. You're the best podcaster in the outdoors. We're the best supplement company, And we can start to guess what happens when we do that. We lose our ability to learn, and we don't become students anymore.
We stop.
We lose creativity.
Right here it says, no matter what you've done up to this point, you better still be a student. If you're not still learning, you're already dying.
Yeah. I was going to say this to you, Corey, as you were telling me this story. Like, how
great minds think alike, man.
Let's say you were on this car ride 2 years ago, and had this conversation come up, would you have heard anything they said?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I have to continually. I struggle with the same insecurities, the same issues that the ego's trying to surface in all of us. I have to remind myself continually, and I think through the years I've tried to do that. So I think if we had the conversation 2 years ago, I think I was in a good place then. It's still hard, hearing the conversation and being able to take it without taking offense. Is hard. Applying it is even harder.
There's a quote that I have from C.S. Lewis, and I read this every now and then. And he says, the opposite of ego and pride is humility. And he says, if anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And a biggish step, too. At least nothing can be done before it. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. And I think that right there is, I think that acknowledging that you have pride and ego is that first step, which then allows you to learn so much more.
You continue to be a student.
Yeah, because here you are now, Corey, and the reason I asked that question was just because if I've been in a worse place than I am now. And I've been criticized in a constructive way, in ways where I should have listened. But my ego, I didn't have enough humility to learn, to take what they said, acknowledge its validity, and then change. Instead, it was just a wall there going, who are you? And absolutely, I am not like that. You're insane. You know what I mean? Like there's
almost an immediate defense mechanism that's initiated,
and we've all been there where we're dealing with someone that this just has a lot of ego, and you can't convince them otherwise. And like C.S. Lewis said, the opposite of ego is humility, and that humility is critical for growth and for learning. And like Ryan Holiday said, you cannot be a student and continually learn without humility. I heard Stephen Ranella was on the Joe Rogan podcast on the last episode he was on. And at the end of it, Stephen Ranella said, Joe Rogan, I really like your podcast. And I was trying to figure out why I liked it. And one of the things I want to say to you is that, to me, you've done a good job with the podcast because you're open to so many different people and ideas. When someone says, well, what's Joe Rogan podcast about? He's like, I had to sit there and think and go, it's about everything, right? It's not like it's
not a topic.
Yeah, you're talking to, it's UFC, it's hunting, it's health and wellness, it's this show. I thought about it when he mentioned that, and I thought about this for a while. Someone in LA, comedian, funny, has a lot of people who want his autograph and a photograph taken with him, right? Millions of people download his podcast every month. But my interactions with Joe, and as a podcaster, I follow all the different podcasts and I just try to learn from them. One thing I've seen from him is that, and this is a trait I love in people. And my brother-in-law, I have a couple brother-in-laws that are just like this. They're always able to take in new information, reassess, and maybe change their position once they learn.
Yep.
They're not married by their ego or their pride. They're not stuck to a certain way or a certain set of rules. It's, they're always open with humility to some other input. And I found that when I talked to Joe, that's how he's been. He's been willing to take in information, learn from a guest, and go, I always thought this, but now that you bring this up and I have new information, now I can think this. That doesn't happen without some level of humility.
It's open-mindedness. And when we have ego closes our mind. It thinks we've already learned, we've established, we're set.
We've reached
we
the
don't
peak.
need that. Yeah, the quote there, the physicist John Wheeler, who helped develop the hydrogen bomb, observed, as our island of knowledge grows, so does the shore of our ignorance. And I love that. Just as we amass this great deal of knowledge in some area, we have to be careful because that's surrounded by a really big island or a big shoreline that's continuing to grow, and that shoreline is actually our ignorance. And
and you talk about, again, another thing that I love that Ryan talked about. You talk about C.S. Lewis quote, or what's the opposite of ego, and it's humility. Mm-hmm. And what would you say, Brian, humility is rooted in? How do we stay humble?
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask all of us here is, like, how do you develop humility? How do you stay humble? How do you keep humility?
Well, I'll tell you how I've developed it to be so humble.
It's difficult, but it's so true. Like, I'm a very humble person. I'm the most humble guy I know.
I'll tell you how to be humble.
It's hard to say how to be humble because that's a roll call you have to take within yourself every day to find that humility. But I would say that the path to humility is easier with love. And in the book, one of the last and final chapters is he talks about love and how that...
Which threw me when I'm sitting here digging all this stuff, and all of a sudden he starts talking about love, and I'm like, what? Touchy-feely? No, we don't need to talk about love. Tell me what I need to do to get over this. And,
exactly. Yeah. He talks about it because as ego is the enemy and can cloud not only our mind, it can stunt our growth, it can eliminate opportunity, because we become so enveloped in this reality that we've talked about that's so distorted that we close ourselves off from not only learning but progressing in this life. And the one thing that allows us to maintain that growth, to be a student, to strive for humility, is to love. Because the love, as scripturally, as life in general, when you love something and you really love something, that passion, the purpose of why you do what you want to do, and it's rooted in love, and genuinely you're trying to help somebody else that may need that help. Back to the theory of, as you have success, you aspire and you have success, then when you have that success, you should look for opportunities not only to help those who are below that need help coming, those who may challenge you there, and those who you can help to raise up. So I think it's really important because ego, I want to read this quote that I got out of a lesson at church that as I was reading Ego is the Enemy, we had this discussion, and it all of a sudden turned into this.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, ego is the enemy of happiness. I think we've talked about a lot of things that it affects each one of us, but it is the absolute ego is the enemy of happiness. And to be truly happy, ego is not going to get you there. It's only going to hold you back from all the things that we've discussed. But one of the things that I loved is this quote that comes from this gentleman named Gordon B. Hinckley. Really, I mean, you want to talk about one of the most positive, loving individuals who genuinely went out and had a purpose and knew what he was about, the work he was trying to accomplish. I mean, that gentleman, that man left a legacy. Any of you guys want to go check him out? Gordon B. Hinckley has many great books, but he left behind a legacy because he was somebody who loved people, cared for them. Oh, genuinely. Fortunately for me, my grandpa and him were very good friends, and I had opportunities to be around him often in life. And that, by being around him, I saw that firsthand.
Yeah.
And this is a quote. And this goes back to extreme ownership. This goes into ego as the enemy. But how do we be happy? Okay? And how do we eliminate ego so that we can be? Well, in Gordon B. Hinckley, what he says is small victories every day will help you reach the goal to win the battle over happiness and unhappiness. Happiness is active, not reactive. Happiness takes effort. Just like every day we have to take effort to check ourselves and take roll call and check our egos, we too have an opportunity every day to be happy, and that also takes effort and work. And small victories every day can be checking your ego. It can be success in your business. It can be spending time with your kids. There's so many things that compounded over time can apply individually to these small victories that bring us happiness. And I think that's important.
Yeah. When I think back to my early years of marriage, and I don't know about you guys.
Ego's still the enemy. Ego is still the enemy.
We got into so many stupid fights that we just don't have anymore. My wife and I do not have those because we have checked our egos at the door. We try very hard to keep our egos just in check all the time, that roll call all the time. And you can make a difference in yourself when you work on it every day, right? Every morning. And I back to the thing I said earlier about motives. I'm continually asking myself what my motives are for why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's just a habit now. Whenever I leave a comment, is my motive because I want to make a difference, or is my motive because I want to be liked? Is that motive because I want someone to notice me? When my wife and I were first married, we would get into fights, and it was because one or both of us had an ego. Now, those things that she does that would have made me upset in the past, I'm like, this doesn't bother me. And the same for her. We just, the ego is not there anymore, and it's changed our relationship. Yeah. It's always been good, but it's better than it's ever been in our lives. I think ego is, the title of this book is perfect. Ego is the enemy. And I like that he used the word ego instead of pride, because there are a lot of people out there who are more secular in nature, right? But at the end of the day, it's the same thing that we're talking about. This book is not, just so people that are listening, it's not a Christian book. It's a very secular book.
It's a very secular book when you read it.
There are, now and then, he brings in a Christian point of view, and he clarifies this is what Christians think, this is what some philosophers and Stoics think, and he brings in all those perspectives. At the end of the day, though, the struggle is real. Ego is a real thing, and he has countless examples of individuals in life that have taken two paths, like Sherman versus Tecumseh Sherman versus Ulysses S. Grant, and others, where he's like, okay, these two go here. This is one with pride
at this point,
one without pride and ego, and this is where they end up, and it's powerful stuff.
I love his examples, his real world examples that he breaks down different situations and different individuals that at any point could have made a different choice, and the result would have been different. We look around, we see successful people that are arrogant, that are filled with ego, and sometimes we say, well, it doesn't matter if we have ego or not. They're successful,
right?
Egos, but no one has ever got where they are in success because of their ego.
No. Yes.
And their ego has not done anything other than limit what they could have done.
Right.
What
It's
more
almost-
they can do
Yeah.
or could have done.
That was one of those quotes where he's like, if you look at those individuals that were crazy egomaniacs, they produced their best work when they were keeping their ego in check.
Yeah.
It's when their ego, got out of control that unraveled that they did their worst work or their least accomplishment. We have a tendency. He mentions in the book to admire many people who were egomaniacs. But he's like, look at all these people who were not egomaniacs and extremely influential in history. So it's more or less a situation where they could have accomplished even more had they not been such an ego, consumed by ego.
Yeah. So almost kind of, that's in closing, right? As we kind of wrap this thing up, because that is a great point is, guys, there's this discussion has been awesome. There's so many things that each of you and ourselves that we can take away from this discussion, from this book, and to each of you, take what you want from it. But we invite you. I would seriously invite you to read this book, and it will, as it did for me, and as we've discussed, it's humbled me in recent and current events to help me realize how grateful I am for the success in my life. And that success is not just Mountain House. It's the success in my family. You talk about your marriages. I'm getting to a point now, we've been married for 8 years, my wife and I've got these 2 beautiful boys. We're expecting a girl. And I start to look at how can I also, when we read the book, Extreme Ownership, oh, dude, and we talked about how to apply to business. Oh, no. I had to apply that to my marriage, and it was tough because I thought that I was always right, or that, I would deflect to my wife and say, this is your fault. And then all of a sudden we had a situation come up because of taxes, because those are awesome. And it was my fault. Yeah. And I could have easily said, this is, but I realized.
You owned it.
I owned it. And I'm starting to have to also start taking roll call with this. And I'm happy that you guys invited me to read this book. I have learned much from it. And I promise each of you listening to this podcast, if you'll read it, and not just read it once, but do as like Corey is a good example. Listen to it, hear it, then grab a hard copy and mark it up and read it again, and find for yourself how it can help you.
I don't see how anyone can read that and have it not change their life.
And I think
maybe it won't make a huge difference in your life, but it will
make some difference. Yeah,
and that's as I've sat here and listened to us talk, I'm like, what's the point of this podcast? What are we really trying to accomplish? Does this apply to business? Does it apply to hunting? I think it applies to everything.
Yes,
and ego's the enemy in everything we're trying to accomplish in life. If we just want to be recognized for something, ego's the enemy.
Yeah.
If we are trying to do something and we get swayed over to wanting to be something, ego's the enemy. If we are successful and all of a sudden we start saying, this has worked for me, I don't need to listen to his advice, he needs to listen to my advice because I'm the successful one, ego's the enemy, all of these things. And, just really to wrap it up, there's a quote that says, Ryan says, it's admirable to want to be a better businessman, better athlete, better conqueror. We should want to be better informed, better off financially. We should want to do great things. I know that I do, but no less impressive an accomplishment. Being better people, being happier people, being balanced people, being content people, being humble and selfless people, or better yet, all of these traits together. It's going to make us better. As we look at this and apply that and recognize it's in all of us.
Yeah.
And for me, it was great to do. It was a great self-check, and I realized maybe it gotten a little bit more down the line than I wanted to admit. And they're little things. They aren't things that are going to necessarily be coming out on the surface, hopefully. Hopefully people aren't saying, well, that guy's the most arrogant guy I know. But it can lead to that if we don't check it.
Yep.
I'm glad that you guys read the book. I remember talking to you guys last week and saying, or last time we were on the show, and you were asking something about what helped you be successful. And I was like, well, honestly, I think humility and pride, like that's a big deal for me. For 15 years, 10 years, I've focused on trying to battle pride and humility and cultivate humility. And not that I'm a pro, you know what I mean? Like, it's a constant thing. But I believe that, and sometimes when I say that to people, They look at me like I have two heads. Like it's not that big a deal. But I think like when you read this, I feel like it's very easy now to understand what I'm talking about. Like I think when I look at my success with Gritty Bowmen, for example, and in life in general, it has a lot to do with managing ego for years. And I've seen it. I've seen this topic, this issue change people's lives, just like extreme ownership. I've seen it change lives. And in fact, extreme ownership, first chapter I think was ego.
Yeah.
I mean, ego is you can't do much else if you can't get that.
You can't get past
gone.
that.
So, Corey, you have these spectacular notes.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this podcast up, but people can get these notes.
So here's the deal.
Yes.
We have access to a very limited supply of custom special-made Bully Bull Extreme bugle tubes with the awesome new Sitka subalpine pattern on the cover. And I made a post on Instagram yesterday, and there were over 200 comments on that, people screaming, I want one, I want one. I got more emails, more direct messages, more contact from people on this topic than I think I've ever gotten before. What can I do to get one? I will do anything. I will pay you any amount. I will do this. I will do that. What can I do? We only have a handful.
Well, David Brinker said that I could have one.
David's right there.
And David Brinker's right there.
He carries no weight. He already shipped. He shipped.
You said I could have one of these, didn't you? Yeah, see?
He shipped them all to me. They're in my control now.
Oh, okay. So Brinker has no executive authority.
He has no authority to make that decision anymore.
Okay.
And he's agreeing, so he can't hear what we're saying, but he just nodded yes. So what we'll do,
how do they get this?
We have 3 of them we're going to give away through the Gritty Bowmen podcast.
Sweet.
Go to elk101.com.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to create a page on there called elk101.com/gritty.
Okay.
Go there. Download these notes. I've got 7 pages of notes from this book. If you don't want to read the whole book, skim through these.
Basically, Corey's Spark Notes.
Yeah. What did I get out of it? And for somebody else, they might look at this and be like, that's not me, that means nothing. But this is what I got out of it. I'll share my thoughts on it.
It's like inside the mind of Corey Jacobsen.
That's what I was saying. It's like you took a book and you wrote another book.
That's only 7 pages. So there'll be a PDF there you can download.
Okay.
Enter your name and email address there when you download that, and we will draw a winner for a bugle tube with the awesome subalpine pattern, which is not even available until April.
Yep.
And these bugle tube covers are not even, it's a custom thing that's just strictly to help promote the launch of the new pattern. So get a custom, one-of-a-kind one. And
I love it.
Maybe, what do we want to say, March
15th?
Yeah, that works.
It's like a good date.
March 15th.
March 15th. Also, here's a quick plug for Mountain Ops. Is that okay?
Yeah.
This doesn't take away from this. But I don't know when this podcast is coming out. When do you think?
Next week.
Next week?
Perfect.
Okay. So here's a quick little plug for you guys. This month, this is really cool. For every $5,
we're in February.
We're in February. This is February 16th.
Yep.
We're over halfway through the month. For every $5 you spend at mountainops.com, you get entered to win a hunt to go to New Zealand with Casey Butler and Eric Chesser from Hush.
Nice.
So we're here at the show, but on our website, you got an opportunity to win this awesome bugle.
Hey, let's
That'd be fun, dude.
Should we throw one of those in the mix?
Let's throw one of those in the mix for Mountain Ops.
So, guys, an exclusive limited edition. We're going to get one of these for this giveaway. But if you go to mountainops.com, anything that has a Mountain Ops logo on it or an authorized dealer, go there, and every $5 you spend is one entry to enter to win a expenses paid hunt to New Zealand to hunt a red stag and a tar on foot with Casey Butler and Eric Chesser from Hush.
Excellent.
Which is really cool. I did that hunt last year. We did a podcast on it. It was a lot of fun. But that'll be cool, too. So could we throw one of these in?
Let's throw one of those in
there. Now, you won't be able to use it in New Zealand.
Now, everyone out there is going, no, quit giving these things away. That's 2 that are out of the mix. How am I going to get one?
Yes. But that would be awesome. So this will be very cool. So thanks for doing that and let us be a part of that.
Absolutely.
It's awesome, folks. Go check out Elk 101.
/Gritty.
/Gritty.
We'll have the condensed notes there to download, and you'll be entered to win one of these tubes that we'll give away on March 15th.
Awesome. I hope people really like this podcast. I hope I feel like we, as much as you talk about this stuff, I feel like you just can't do it justice because of how much it's impacted my life.
Mm-hmm.
But you do what you can. I hope we at least a few people go out and do that because it's important stuff, I think.
So what is the next book we're going to read for the Gritty Bowmen?
Dude, we're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, let's maybe keep it open for suggestions from the Gritty followers.
Yeah, I'd be very curious. I think you asked that question actually online, and we got a lot of comments. So, we're going to do another. We're going to keep doing this. This book club's fun.
It is. And it's I'm not a reader. My wife will attest. She's like, "Who is this man that has taken over
2 years
here?"
ago, or like a year and a half, I remember asking Corey, so what was the last book you read, and what's the next book you're going to read? And Corey looked at me like
Did you say read? And
I think all of you that's listening should understand this because this is really funny you say that. So my wife Jordan goes, so I heard about she sees all these comments and these things coming onto my phone. She goes, "You read a book?" Yeah. She goes, "Did you lie on the podcast?" I was like, "No, babe, I read the book Extreme Ownership." And she's like, "Who are you? You haven't read books forever." I was like, "I know. I just got inspired through these gentlemen. We had a great time, and now after reading this one, Ego's the Enemy, I'm excited for the next one, like whatever that is. Like,
yeah,
the book club's cool, guys.
Amazon Prime is the devil.
It's the way to go.
It's so easy to get on there and hit click. I've got a stack of them
we're getting motion from Snyder. It's time to cut it out.
No. We better. He looks like he's going to hurt somebody. So,
dude,
thanks you. Stay gritty.
Jordan.
Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
Goodbye, everybody.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, "I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value." We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. We thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, Hoyt, Vortex, Phelps Game Calls, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowmen. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them however you can. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.